This is the second hub level of the game and is supposed to give some contrast to the stressful lurker encounter. We think building up contrast like this is extremely important for the horror mood. Only by seeing a bright level can you appreciate the dark one and so on. If you do not do this, player will get used to the stuff and the effect will lessen greatly.
You have an ascending room. Will it take us to the inner sanctum?
It will definitely take care of the vertical part of our journey. So, you have ridden an elevator before?
Yes, the Colosseum at Regent's Park has one. It takes you to the gallery where you can view the panorama.
Good. This ride might be a little longer, and in the other direction.
When I first started working on the elevator, I had detailed concept art as base for my work. This is both a blessing and a curse. Concept art saves a lot of time for us artists, as we just have to copy what we see in the picture, but it also takes away some fun parts of our work, as we don't have to design anything ourselves. In this case, the concept art was very detailed and there wasn't much to change. However, I noticed that the roof part on the concept was dark and dull, so that's where I could add details of my own. I added the patterns to fill out the empty space. I wanted them to fit with the eastern feel of the elevator and took inspiration from Arabic windows. In the end, it's not a very big addition, but it adds to the overall impression of the elevator as something exotic that doesn't really fit in with the blue-grey stones of Brandenburg.
In the original pitch, Herbert was a fairly important character, but it didn't really reflect in the games, so we tried a few different things to incorporate him, but it never really made any sense. Herbert was important to Daniel's background, but in the end he didn't have any impact on the story happening right now, that is, the conflict between Daniel and Alexander. So most of his things was cut during the last stage of production.
Journal is gone. What would they want with my journal?
Daniel is a pretty complicated character to write for, as we didn't want the player to feel that they were losing control by having feelings imposed on them. After the amnesia kicks in, everything which is Daniel is essentially gone. The player is the new Daniel, and he should be able to act the way he pleases, and even reject his own background as he discovers it. That is why everything concerning Daniel is flashbacks. Even the diary entries are read as what is being told is happening right now. That is, it is the old Daniel telling the story, and not the player reading it.
In this room, everything is connected to destruction and home. This was Daniel's home as Alexander's guest, and the diary entries are about Daniel being home in London and things falling apart. These sort of connections are not something that we want the player to get, but rather it should end up in the subconscious and work toward building the mood. Also worth noting is this focus, as explained in the commentary of Winecellar, where I want the player's attention on a certain aspect. We hope this makes the story clearer. The idea is to slowly build it up, one part at a time, giving the player time to digest and think about it.
July 1839. I received a letter today from the Algerian governor's office disclosing the fate of Herbert's expedition. About a week after my departure, Abdullah, one of the men traveling with us, returned from the desert. He was badly injured, as if maimed by a lion. The man rambled deliriously about the expedition being attacked by something horrible. The French quickly dispatched a search party to look for the expedition. After searching for days, they found the camp abandoned without any trace of Herbert or his men. Tomorrow, I'll retrieve the things they recovered from Herbert's tent at the customs house. I don't know what to make of it, but I'm worried for him.
When we create props, we usually have concept pictures or reference images to look at when modeling the object, just to make sure it stays within the art style that we are going for. When creating a chair, a table, or a bookcase, just to name a few, we usually have to plan the measurements before we get them into the game, because having something in the game that isn't the right size can break the immersion. But sometimes you have to cheat that and test it out, because the camera perspective can really trick you. I have the perfect example of the camera tricking you sometimes. Take out the lantern in-game and look at the wall or an object in the same height as the lantern and try guessing how big the lantern will be next to that object. Then walk up as close as you can to that object and compare. If you got a good example out of this, you see that the hand and lantern is in fact very small, but it feels right when it's close to the camera. But we don't want to go on gut feeling on the measurements of every object. That could really get out of hand quickly, and a lot of things could feel out of place. So it's basically a matter of changing the scale if it feels weird. When modeling the prop, we try to make it as close as the reference images as we can, or if you've got a sketch, that is. It's often a quite simple process that usually doesn't take that much time, but it completely depends on what it is and if the sketch we have are detailed. Before giving the model a texture and working on that, we need to create a UV map for it. A UV map can best be described as an image with painted and edited details to it that is wrapped around the object. So the texture for a cardboard box, for example, would look like a box that you have unfolded onto the ground. After the UV map is created, we start to work on the texture. And here, we usually start with adding untouched materials like wood or metal, and these are from free photos found on the internet. We also paint in dirt in corners, highlights on the edges to enhance them. We can also bake and add an ambient occlusion map to the texture, which is basically a process where the computer calculates where the texture should be dark and where it should be light. We often generate a normal map based on certain details in the texture. A normal map uses light to add bumps or dents without using more polygons on the object. For specular maps, we use the red channel for the intensity level of the map and the green channel to determine the power of it. After all the textures are done, we export them to collada format and import them to our editors. There, we set material values, create bodies for collision, and stuff like that.